The yellow school bus pulled up to the mansion at 6:47 a.m. For the first time in his life, Blake Hamilton would ride with the kids he'd spent years looking down on. But the driver watching him in the rearview mirror wasn't just any driver. He was about to teach Blake two secrets that would destroy everything the boy believed about power. Hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Blake Hamilton stood at the end of his marble driveway, designer backpack hanging off one shoulder, watching the approaching bus like it was a hearse coming for his social life. 18 years old, heir to Hamilton Pharmaceuticals, reduced to riding public transportation because his father had finally snapped. The bus door wheezed open. The driver, a black man in his 60s with silver at his temples, looked down at Blake with eyes that seemed to see straight through him. "You coming up or you planning to walk?" Blake climbed the steps. The bus was already half full. Conversations died as he passed. Everyone knew who he was. The rich kid who'd spent 4 years treating them like extras in his personal movie. He slumped into a back seat, trying to disappear. The driver adjusted his rearview mirror, caught Blake's eye, and said something that made no sense. "This mirror shows me where we've been. But watch." He tilted it slightly. "Now it shows where you're going. That's the choice you make every morning." Blake looked away. Just what he needed. Philosophy from a bus driver. But as they pulled away from his mansion, he couldn't shake the feeling that this ride was going to change everything. 3 weeks earlier, Blake had everything. The Lamborghini, the black card, the guaranteed Harvard admission his father had purchased with a donation, the name that made teachers look the other way when he turned in blank tests. Then came the meeting that shattered it all. "You're at the bottom of your entire class," the counselor had said, sliding a report across her desk. "Not just failing, dead last. Out of 347 seniors," Blake had laughed. "So, you know who my father is. Your father is why we're having this conversation. He requested these numbers." That night, Richard Hamilton laid down the law in his study, surrounded by photos of himself with senators, CEOs, and a president. "You're an embarrassment," Richard said, not looking up from quarterly reports. "My company saves lives. My son can't even save his GPA." "Your company charges $700 for insulin that costs $3 to make," Blake shot back. Richard's eyes went cold. "That insulin pays for your car, your clothes, your entire life. But not anymore." He slid a paper across the desk. Blake's trust fund, frozen, credit cards, cancelled, car, repossessed. "You'll take the bus like everyone else. You'll pass your classes or you'll get nothing. No money, no name, no future." "Dad, I'm not your dad right now. I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company looking at its worst investment. Prove me wrong or get out of my portfolio." That first morning on the bus, Blake had tried to shrink into his seat, but the driver kept watching him in that mirror like he was waiting for something. At the next stop, 3 kids got on. The driver greeted each by name. "Morning, Maria. How'd the chemistry test go?" "Aced it, Mr. Carter. That trick you showed me about balancing equations worked. Told you sometimes you just need a different angle." Blake frowned. Since when did bus drivers help with homework? More stops? More personal greetings? The driver knew everyone, their struggles, their victories, their dreams. "Jerome, you staying after school for SAT prep?" "Can't afford it, Mr. Carter." The driver reached into a box beside his seat, pulled out an SAT book. "Found this at a yard sale. Thought of you." Jerome's face lit up. "For real?" "Knowledge should be free, son. Pass it on when you're done." Blake watched this exchange, something stirring in his chest. When was the last time anyone had given him something that wasn't bought with his father's money? At school, as everyone filed off, Blake lingered. "You're not just a bus driver," he said. The man smiled. "William Carter. And you're right. I'm not just anything. Nobody is." "The way you knew about Maria's test, Jerome's SATs." "I pay attention. Most people are so busy looking forward they forget to see who's around them." William paused. "What do you see when you look around, Blake?" "How do you know my name?" "Son, everyone knows your name. Question is, do you know theirs?" Blake couldn't answer. He'd spent 4 years in school with these kids, and couldn't name 5 of them. "Tomorrow morning," William said, "sit in the middle of the bus. You might learn something." The next morning, Blake found himself moving to the middle seats without thinking. The bus filled differently from this angle. He could see faces, hear conversations. "My mom's working 3 jobs since the insulin price went up. We might lose the house if Dad can't find work. I'm teaching myself calculus from YouTube because we can't afford a tutor." Each story hit like a slap. These weren't just kids. They were warriors, fighting battles he'd never imagined. William caught his eye in the mirror. Starting to see? After school, Blake waited until the bus emptied. "Can I ask you something?" he said to William. "Shoot." "Why do you care so much? About these kids?" William was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out his wallet. Inside, a faded newspaper clipping. "Jefferson High Principal creates miracle. 100% college acceptance for inner-city students." "That's you?" "Was me. 10 years ago, I created a program that changed everything. Partnered with colleges, brought in mentors, built a system where zip code didn't determine destiny. We got featured on 60 Minutes. They called me America's most innovative principal." "What happened?" William's face darkened. "I discovered something I wasn't supposed to. Wealthy parents were bribing test administrators, buying their kids' way into programs meant for underprivileged students. I had evidence, names, numbers." "You reported it?" "I tried. But those parents included judges, politicians, people who make problems disappear. They made me disappear instead, fabricated complaints, buried my reputation. By the time they were done, I was unhirable." "That's illegal." "That's power," William corrected. "But here's what I learned, and this is the first secret. Real power isn't what you have. It's what you can walk away from." He stood, preparing for his afternoon route. "They took my title, my salary, my reputation, but they couldn't take my purpose. I walked away from everything they thought mattered and found what actually does. Driving a bus, saving kids, one route at a time." William smiled. "Tomorrow, bring something expensive, something that defines you." "Why?" "Because you're going to give it away." Blake brought his Rolex. $30,000 worth of Swiss engineering that his father had given him for his 16th birthday. "Perfect," William said. "Now who needs time more than you?" Blake looked around the bus, confused. Then he saw her. Sarah, junior year, always exhausted. She'd fallen asleep on her backpack, phone alarm clutched in her hand. "She works nights at the hospital," a kid whispered. "Helps her mom clean offices. Sometimes she's late because she doesn't have a reliable alarm." Blake stared at his Rolex, then at Sarah. Before he could overthink it, he walked over and gently placed the watch beside her. She woke as the bus stopped at school, saw the watch. Her eyes went wide. "I can't—" "You need it more than I do," Blake said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "My mom, she's been saving for months to buy me a watch for my job interviews. Now she doesn't have to." The bus erupted. Kids who'd spent years hating Blake Hamilton suddenly saw something else. William nodded in the mirror. "How does it feel?" he asked Blake later. Blake searched for words. "Like I lost $30,000, but gained something worth more." That's the first secret in action. Power isn't about accumulating. It's about knowing what you can release. Your father has everything but can't let go of anything. Who's really trapped? That week, Blake gave away more. Designer shoes to a kid whose soles were held together with duct tape. His leather jacket to someone shivering in a thin hoodie. Each release felt like shedding skin. But the real change came when he started seeing what others gave. Maria tutoring kids for free. Jerome sharing his lunch with someone who couldn't afford one. Sarah, now never late, helping other students with job applications. "Everyone on this bus is rich," William said one morning. "They just measure wealth differently." One rainy Thursday, the bus broke down on a side street. While waiting for repairs, William and Blake sat in the empty vehicle. "Can I tell you something?" William said. "About why I really drive this route?" Blake nodded. William pulled out a photo. A woman, beautiful and smiling, holding an insulin pen. My wife, Angela, diabetic, brilliant teacher, dead 3 years now. I'm sorry, she died because we couldn't afford insulin. After I lost my job, we lost our insurance. The insulin she needed to live cost $700 a month, same insulin that costs $30 in Canada. Blake's blood went cold. Hamilton Pharmaceuticals, his father's company. She rationed it, William continued. Took half doses to make it last. One night she went into a coma. By the time I got her to the hospital... William, I know who your father is, Blake. Known since the first day you stepped on my bus. Then why did you... Because you're not your father. Not yet. But you're becoming someone. Question is, who? Blake felt tears burning his eyes. He killed your wife. His prices killed my wife. His choices. But here's what Angela taught me before she died. Hate chains you to the past. Purpose pulls you to the future. I don't understand how you can... I specifically requested this route, William said quietly. I'd been watching you for months. Saw you drowning in your father's shadow. Saw you failing everything because succeeding meant becoming him. You chose to help me? After what he did? I chose to save you. Because saving Richard Hamilton's son from becoming Richard Hamilton? That's a revolution worth driving for. The next morning, Blake found William at 5 a.m. at a 24-hour diner, surrounded by 5 students teaching calculus over coffee. You're early, William said. Couldn't sleep. Not after yesterday. Good. Means you're ready for the second secret. William turned to the other students. Tell Blake why you're here. Mr. Carter pays for our breakfast, one said, every morning before the route. He teaches us stuff school doesn't, another added, like how to apply for scholarships, balance checkbooks, avoid predatory loans. Blake looked at William. How can you afford all this? Show him, William told the students. They looked at each other, then one pulled out an envelope. Inside, cash. We all pitch in what we can, she explained. Mr. Carter lives in his car to afford helping us, so we help back. You live in your car. William shrugged. It's just a place to sleep. This, he gestured to the students. This is home. That's when Blake understood the second secret before William even said it. You don't learn to rise, William said. You learn to lift. Every time you elevate someone else, you elevate yourself, not in status, in spirit. But you have nothing. I have everything. I have Jerome heading to college next year, Maria becoming a doctor, Sarah interviewing for jobs that'll change her family's life. What's your father have? Stock prices. Blake was quiet. Then, teach me, really teach me. Not just philosophy. Everything. That's a big commitment. I'm ready, William smiled. Then let's begin. But first you need to understand something. Your father's going to fight this. He's going to see your transformation as betrayal. Let him. You say that now. But when he threatens to take everything, he already has. What's left to lose? That, William said, is exactly the right question. What started with 5 students became 10, then 20. The yellow bus transformed into a rolling classroom. Before school, after school, students gathered to learn what school wouldn't teach. William taught financial literacy to prevent predatory loans. Blake discovered he had a gift for explaining complex math in simple terms. Sarah started a peer counseling circle. Jerome led SAT prep. They covered the bus windows with formulas, quotes, dreams written in dry erase marker. The seats became desks. The aisles became discussion spaces. Education isn't a place, William said one morning. It's a decision. But success breeds attention. Parents started asking questions. Teachers noticed improved grades. The school board received complaints about unauthorized educational activities. Then Blake did something that changed everything. He started recording William's lessons on his phone, not secretly, with permission. Your wisdom shouldn't stay on this bus, he told William. What are you planning? A podcast. Lessons from the driver's seat. Share what you teach with kids who don't have a William Carter. Blake, that kind of attention, is exactly what we need. You've been hiding your light under a bushel. Time to let it shine. The first episode dropped on a Tuesday. By Thursday, it had 10,000 downloads. By the next week, 100,000. Comments poured in. This man saved my life and he doesn't even know it. Why isn't he running our education system? More wisdom in 20 minutes than 12 years of school, but with visibility came vulnerability. Richard Hamilton stood in Blake's room, holding a tablet displaying the podcast statistics. Explain this. It's a podcast about education. It's an embarrassment. My son, learning from a bus driver, recording it, broadcasting our family's association with, he couldn't finish, with someone who actually cares about kids, with a failure, a nobody, a man who lives in his car. You know about that? Richard's smile was cold. I know everything. William Carter, former principal, fired for insubordination. Wife died because she was too poor to afford proper medical care. She died because you charged $700 for insulin that costs $3 to make. The slap came fast, sharp. Blake touched his cheek, more shocked than hurt. You will delete that podcast, you will stop riding that bus, you will transfer to Exeter Academy, or you will lose everything. I've already lost everything worth losing. You think you're profound? You're a child playing at Revolution. I'll show you what real power looks like. The next day, William received notice. Budget cuts. His route was being eliminated, effective immediately. But Richard Hamilton had underestimated something. He'd forgotten that in the age of social media, stories spread faster than power can contain them. The video went viral in 6 hours. Blake, standing on the school steps, voice clear and strong. They fired William Carter for teaching us to think, for showing us that education isn't about memorizing facts, but understanding truth, for proving that wisdom doesn't require a classroom, just someone who cares. Behind him 50 students, then 100, then more. Mr. Carter taught me 2 secrets that changed my life. First, real power isn't what you have, it's what you can walk away from. So I'm walking away. From my trust fund, from my inheritance, from a future built on charging dying people $700 for medicine that costs $3. Gasps, cameras clicking, someone live streaming. Second, you don't learn to rise, you learn to lift, so we're lifting each other. Starting today, we're creating our own school, the Carter Institute, free education, real wisdom, no one turned away. With what money? Someone shouted. Blake smiled. With this. He held up a check, his college fund, $2 million. My father gave me this for Harvard, but William Carter taught me that the best education isn't bought, it's built, so we're building it. The crowd erupted, but Blake wasn't done. And to anyone watching who's been told they're not enough, that their wisdom doesn't count because of their title or their bank account, remember this. The man who changed my life drives a bus, lives in his car, and has more riches in his heart than my billionaire father has in his vaults. The video exploded across social media. Carter Institute began trending. News crews descended on the school. But the real power came from the comments. I had a teacher like this. The system crushed her too. Donating $100 to the Carter Institute, it's all I have. My company will provide free internet for your students. I'm a retired teacher, I'll volunteer. Within 48 hours, they'd raised $500,000 in small donations. William sat in his car that night, watching the numbers climb on Blake's phone, tears streaming down his face. This isn't what I wanted, he said. I just wanted to help kids. You did, Blake replied. Now let us help you. Richard Hamilton's office occupied the top floor of a glass tower that scraped the sky. Blake hadn't been there in months. Now he stood before his father's desk like a defendant before a judge. You've cost me significant embarrassment, Richard said, not looking up from his monitors. Stock price dropped 3 points because my son publicly attacked our insulin pricing. Good. Richard's eyes snapped up. Good? Maybe if it drops enough, you'll remember that medicine is supposed to heal people, not bankrupt them. You sound like him, like that bus driver. I hope so. Richard stood, walked to the window overlooking the city. Do you know why his wife really died, Blake? Because she couldn't afford insulin. Because she was weak. Because they made poor financial decisions. Because they didn't plan properly for medical expenses. She was a teacher, Dad. She spent her life educating kids. She deserved to live. Deserving has nothing to do with reality. The market decides who lives and who dies. Then maybe it's time to change the market. Richard turned, and for the first time Blake saw something like fear in his father's eyes. You're serious about this institute? Dead serious. Using your college fund, every penny. You'll fail, he'll fail, you'll all fail, and when you do, don't come crawling back. Blake headed for the door, then stopped. William asked me to give you something. He placed a photo on the desk. Angela Carter, smiling, holding her insulin pen. He forgives you, Blake said. He wanted you to know that. He forgives you for killing his wife, says hate chains you to the past, but purpose pulls you to the future. Richard stared at the photo, his jaw tight. He's a better man than you'll ever be, Blake added, and thanks to him I might be too. The Carter Institute opened in an abandoned warehouse on the east side of town. No marble halls or manicured lawns, just space, possibility, and purpose. William stood before the first class, 50 students who'd been written off by the system, kids who worked nights, raised siblings, fought circumstances that would break adults. Welcome, he said, to a different kind of education. Here we don't teach you what to think, we teach you how to think. We don't prepare you for tests. We prepare you for life. Blake had assembled an unlikely faculty, retired teachers hungry to teach again, college students who remembered being lost, parents with skills to share, even some of his former classmates, teaching what they knew best. Sarah taught interview skills and professional development. Jerome led SAT prep. Maria tutored in sciences. Each one lifted as they climbed. The curriculum was revolutionary. Morning sessions, core academics taught through real-world application afternoons, life skills, financial literacy, emotional intelligence, critical thinking. Evenings, community service, because learning without giving was just educated selfishness. But the heart of the institute was still the bus. William had bought it when the district auctioned it off, painted it bright yellow with purple accents, turned it into a mobile classroom that visited neighborhoods where kids couldn't reach the warehouse. Education should come to you, he said, not the other way around. 6 months in, the state tried to shut them down. Uncertified teachers, unapproved curriculum, building code violations. The hearing was packed, parents, students, media, and in the back, trying to go unnoticed, Richard Hamilton. Blake testified first, showed test scores, institute students improving at 3 times the rate of traditional schools, college acceptance letters, job offers, lives changed. But the board wasn't impressed. Rules were rules. Regulations existed for a reason. Then William spoke. 20 years ago, I followed every rule, had every certification, jumped through every hoop. And you know what? I was failing kids, teaching to tests that measured memorization, not understanding, following curricula designed by people who hadn't been in a classroom in decades. He paused, scanning the room. Then I lost everything, became a bus driver, and discovered I could teach more in those morning rides than I ever could in a classroom, because I was finally free to teach what mattered. Mr. Carter, the board president interrupted, you're not a certified teacher anymore. You're right. I'm not a teacher. I'm an educator. There's a difference. Teachers follow lesson plans. Educators change lives. That's very poetic, but let me ask you something, William continued. How many of your certified teachers live in their cars to afford helping students? How many use their grocery money to buy kids' books? How many have their students' parents offering to take them in because they've become family? Silence. We're not asking for your approval, William said. We're informing you that education is happening with or without your permission. Shut us down and we'll teach in parks. Close our building and we'll use libraries. Take our bus and we'll walk. Because revolution doesn't need certification. It just needs commitment. The room erupted in applause. The board looked uncomfortable. The president called for order. "We'll review your case. Decision in 30 days. As people filed out, Richard Hamilton approached William. "Mr. Carter." William turned, no surprise on his face. "Mr. Hamilton." "My son, he's different now." "No, he's himself now. You just never saw who that was." "I want to propose something." Blake stepped between them. "Dad, don't—" "Let him speak," William said gently. Richard pulled out a check. "Anonymous donation to the Institute." The amount was staggering, enough to run the Institute for 10 years. "Why?" Blake asked. "Because—" Richard struggled with words. "Because I've been thinking about that photo, about Angela Carter, about how many Angelas die every day because of my prices. And maybe it's time to measure success differently." William looked at the check, then handed it back. "We don't want your money, Mr. Hamilton." "What?" "We want your change. Lower your insulin prices. Save lives instead of destroying them. That's worth more than any donation." Richard stared at him. "That would cost me millions." "What's it costing you now? Your son? Your soul? Your legacy?" "The board would never—" "You are the board. You have the power. Question is, will you walk away from profit to walk toward purpose?" The news broke on a Tuesday. Hamilton Pharmaceuticals announced a 90% reduction in insulin prices. The stock market panicked. Richard Hamilton was called a traitor to capitalism. But in hospital rooms across the country, diabetics cried with relief. Parents hugged children they could now afford to keep alive. William Carter's wife's death had not been in vain. The state board approved the Carter Institute unanimously. Suddenly, what had been a threat to the system became a model for it. Blake found his father sitting alone in his office that night, staring at the city lights. "The board fired me," Richard said quietly. "Hostile takeover. Said I'd lost my mind." "I'm sorry." "I'm not." Richard turned to his son. "For the first time in 20 years, I'm not. Do you know what I realized? I had everything and felt nothing. Now I have less and feel alive." William calls that the first secret. Real power isn't what you have. It's what you can walk away from. Richard smiled sadly. "Smart man. Come teach at the Institute." "Teach what?" "How to destroy lives for profit. Teach business ethics, real ethics. Show kids how to build companies that heal instead of harm." Richard considered this. He'd have me. After everything. William believes in redemption, says hate chains you to the past, but purpose pulls you to the future. Richard nodded. "I'd like that future." 1 year later, the Carter Institute had become a movement. 15 locations across 3 states. 10,000 students. A waiting list that broke hearts because they couldn't take everyone. William still drove the original bus every morning, picking up kids for the flagship location. Blake rode with him, now as co-director, teaching math and philosophy between stops. "You could have a car," William reminded him one morning. "The Institute pays enough." "Why would I want a car? I'd miss this." "Miss what?" "Watching you change lives before 7 a.m., seeing kids discover they matter, being part of something bigger than myself. You sound like a teacher. I learned from the best." At the next stop, a new student boarded. Expensive clothes, dead eyes, slumped shoulders. Blake recognized the look. Wealth without worth, privilege without purpose. "First day?" Blake asked. The kid nodded. "My parents think this place will fix me. I'm failing everything." "What's your name?" "Alexander." "Well, Alexander, let me tell you 2 secrets that might change your life." William smiled in the mirror as Blake began teaching, the cycle continuing. 5 years later, 60 Minutes returned to profile William Carter. Not as a principal this time, but as the man who'd revolutionized American education. "You went from running one school to inspiring hundreds," the interviewer said. "How?" William, now with more silver in his hair, but the same fire in his eyes, smiled. "I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find your real purpose. I lost my job, my wife, my home, but I found my mission." "Which is?" proving that wisdom doesn't require wealth, that teachers don't need titles, that education happens wherever someone cares enough to share what they know. Your critics say the Carter Institute undermines traditional education. Good. Traditional education undermines traditional students. We're just offering an alternative for kids the system forgot. And Blake Hamilton, the billionaire's son who gave up everything? The camera panned to Blake, now 23, teaching a calculus class to kids who looked like he used to, lost, angry, convinced they were stupid. Blake proves that transformation is possible at any level. He went from failing every test to teaching others how to succeed, from inheriting an empire to building a revolution. Do you ever regret the path that brought you here? The losses? William was quiet for a long moment. My wife Angela used to say that purpose is like insulin. Without it, you die slowly. I spent years after her death dying slowly. Then I found my purpose again, one bus ride at a time. Last question. What would you tell someone who thinks they have nothing to offer? William looked directly at the camera. I'd tell them this. I'm a bus driver who lives in his car and owns 3 shirts, but I'm rich in ways billionaires dream about. Because every morning I wake up knowing that someone's life will be better because I exist. That's wealth. Everything else is just paper. The graduation ceremony was held in the warehouse where it all began. 500 students in caps and gowns that they'd earned, not bought, parents crying in folding chairs, teachers who'd volunteered their time beaming with pride. William took the podium, his voice carrying across the space. 5 years ago, a young man got on my bus convinced he was worthless. Today, that same young man has taught over 1,000 students that worth isn't measured in dollars, but in difference made. Blake stood with the graduates, not above them. He'd insisted on walking with the students, not sitting on stage. Today, you graduate not just with knowledge, but with purpose. You've learned the 2 secrets that change everything. Real power isn't what you have. It's what you can walk away from, and you don't learn to rise, you learn to lift. Take these secrets into the world. Use them to build businesses that heal, not harm. Create art that inspires, not just sells. Teach others what you've learned, freely and fearlessly. Because education isn't something you get, it's something you become, and then something you give. As caps flew into the air, Richard Hamilton stood in the back, teaching business ethics to anyone who'd listen. His company was gone, his fortune depleted, but his son had never looked at him with more pride. Sarah was heading to medical school, full scholarship. Jerome had started a non-profit tutoring organization. Maria was teaching at the institute while finishing her PhD. And in the parking lot, the yellow bus sat ready for Monday morning. Because revolution doesn't end with graduation. It begins with the next student who climbs those steps, broken and convinced they're worthless, about to discover they're wrong. William Carter, bus driver, educator, revolutionary, would be there at 6:47 a.m., ready to change another life, ready to share 2 secrets, ready to prove that sometimes the most powerful teachers come in the most unexpected packages. The Institute's motto, painted on the side of the bus, said it all. Education isn't a place. It's a decision. Decide wisely. If you believe in stories that show how wisdom comes from unexpected places and how true education transforms lives, hit that subscribe button below. More powerful journeys are coming, and we'd love to have you with us.